So hi folks, it's really good to see you again. Welcome to part 2 as we talk me, Jesus and the church with Stephen Halford. If you've not had a chance to hear part 1, then I suggest going back and having a look. There's some really good rich material early on about Stephen's upbringing and his work in working with leather and fabrics and all kinds of really and eggs and all kinds of really interesting stuff there before Stephen talked about his journey of faith and how he came to faith. And it was a kind of gradual journey, Stephen, punctuated with sort of high points, is what we'll kind of say, rather than a kind of road, to Damascus experience, bang. But yeah, and so now we just got an opportunity. Stephen just intimated there have been times that he has struggled in life, and his faith has sustained him. So now we're just going to focus a little bit on that and then talk about church, I think. So over to you, Stephen. I mean, can you just describe perhaps a time when you have struggled and your faith's been helpful?
Actually, the church and struggling and faith, for me, you struggle to separate. I mean, with Nick, it was obviously the loss of his wife, Rachel, and things like that. Actually, some of my struggles have been within the church, which may sound a little bit daft, really.
No, but it's really interesting, because I think what we don't want to do is portray the church as something that, oh, it's all fine, I came along to church and it was all right. When in reality, we know we struggle as human beings, and that the church can be a place of conflict, be creative conflict, but it can be a place of conflict as well. So yeah.
I mean, for me, one of the big struggles I've had in my life, certainly my spiritual faith life, is, I suppose, I made the rod for my own back. I candidated. I applied to be what you are, a minister, and I wasn't accepted. And as anyone who's been through that sort of process knows, you lay yourself absolutely, totally bare. There's no places to hide. You put everything on the line. Many upsides. The study was fantastic. The people I journeyed with people that I had no right to study with. I was studying with professors and thinking, what am I doing studying with professors? I went to a secondary modern and struggled.
Right, yeah.
I'm sitting in the same room as a professor of constitutional law and maths. And you're thinking, this is surreal. This is really quite something else. And I mean, but actually, when you get the letter saying, it was a letter, now it's an email, thank you, but no thank you. That's a bit of a struggle. And that's within the church, because it's the church that's made the decision, and you have to accept the decision. You go into the process for better or worse. It's not a criticism of the church. It's just how things are. But saying all that, it was my faith that in all the struggles I had, what did I do wrong? Have I got this wrong? What's going on? It was my faith that kept me going. It was not necessarily the faith in the church, but faith in God. I remember one particular Thursday night, I'd just got the letter saying, thank you, but no thank you. And that is about as hard as you're going to get. And I remember laying in bed, and I'll be honest, there wasn't a lot of sleep, and there's an awful lot more tears than there was sleep. And suddenly at some earthly hour of the morning, me and God we were having serious words.
Yes.
Very much in the line of the Psalms. I was having a good old rant. And I mean, I was not holding back.
Yeah.
Because he's big enough to take it. And I suddenly got within that a sense of peace. I'll say on the line of, we hear about Peter denying God and Jesus saying, not denying Jesus, feed my sheep, feed my lambs. And it was a little bit, and I say a little bit, I'm not going to say it's on the same scale anywhere near, a little bit sense of what he must have experienced. And I just felt God saying, it's okay. It's fine. You'll be all right. And it wasn't an instant thing. And I did have a lot of struggles. But within all that, I just sensed it's okay. It wasn't a case of you failed or anything like that. It was a case of you've done this journey, but it's going to be okay. And it was a little bit odd because I was really up for this, me a bit on the line of Job, if you like. Me and him were going to have some serious words, but he said, "Don't worry, it's fine. I'm in this with you. You know, just it's going to be okay." And I mean, also within, you know, I lost my parents, and the journey for them wasn't necessarily easy. With health issues, especially towards the end. And actually, to be able to share with other people within the church who were going through pretty much the same sort of situations, it was a case of, hey, what have you all been doing this week? Oh, mine did so. Oh, mine did that last week. Mine's just done this. And actually being with people who you could be open and honest with and saying, I've had a lousy week. And actually to have the support of somebody else, yeah, mine did that, or yeah, you got to watch for that one. Actually, to be able to share in that open, honest way was actually a real, like a pressure cooker release. You weren't carrying, the confidences were there. You had no worries about that. People who knew something of your journey and who were sharing that journey with you, it was really something special.
I, in a sense, there's lots of different angles to look at, and I think we can cover one or two, but I want to stick with this kind of my response as I've seen you in ministry, and we all have a ministry. The issue is it presbyter, is it diet, you know, whatever. Has been one of, wow, that is a huge amount of integrity. Because for those of you those people who aren't familiar with candidating, we're talking about really opening ourselves up in vulnerability and talking about a sense of call. And that's a kind of difficult thing to do, because you have to assert what you think God is saying. You have to assert and say, I think the Lord is leading me in that one direction. You know, and there is always that sense of saying, you know, I'm open to hear or to be challenged on that, but it's still a kind of polarized position to be in. You know, you say, yeah, the church says no. You know, that is really, really hard. No matter, yeah, sure, I can sort of say, well, I sense this might be the right direction, but it's still, the no is really kind of challenging when it comes back. But also, what kind of people would we be if we didn't have a measure of certitude about the direction that we felt to be heading? So it's a real kind of, hopefully I'm not describing it in a clumsy way, but whichever way you look at it, you can't soft soap it. That it's a real point of challenge. You know, people don't enter into offering for ministry lightly. You know, so I'll have a laugh. You know, well, I thought I'll go for this. Yeah, I thought I just saw it in the back of the paper one day. I thought, oh, there's more money in it than you know, and I like the uniform, so I'll try it. I mean, it's something that you have to you feel called to, and then for the church to say, well, no or not yet, and sometimes the not yets can keep coming, which is basically feels like a no, you know, because you wouldn't put yourself in that position in the first place. It's really, really difficult. So I think when I sort of just observed you, you know, and how you were serving in the circuit as a local preacher, because still a local preacher, you're still in front of people, still leading congregations. I think the first thought was, I don't know how that you'd reached that point, but I saw nothing but integrity. Mm-hmm. And secondly, again, goodness knows on how you sort of surf that, you know, how you kind of work that through of finding that, I guess, relative peace in your heart and focusing on, right, I've got to preach a a sermon, I've got to lead a group of people in worship now, that actually, curiously, yes, somehow God must be with you to have that level. Because it left me thinking, Stephen, it leaves me thinking, why on earth would someone in their right mind choose to stay within the Methodist Church when the Methodist Church has
Ask the question. For me, church as in denominational place is not an accident. It's a very thought about and prayed through. When we came to faith and the children or as a family, what is the right place for us as a family in church? And we explored different churches, and the Methodist Church in Crowley was the right place, without a shadow of a doubt. It was a conscious decision. And as time went on, as you said, we moved to Dogsthorpe. It was a conscious decision. It took about 2 years to get to that place, but it was the right place to take our daughter, because she still has a faith, a growing faith. Doesn't attend church at the moment. Well, between work and lockdown, it's a bit of a problem for her, but she still has a faith. And it was the right place for her to grow in a faith with other young Christians at the time, young people searching. Since we've asked the question, is the Methodist Church the right place for myself and Susan? Our life has changed. We've no longer got the children. It's just the two of us. Years are creeping on. What is the right place? What is the right role for us? Is it Methodist Church? Is it Dogsthorpe? Is it Peterborough? We actually asked the question. And so far, God's always said, stay where you are. So we're staying put. But it's not just, I've been here all my life, I'm staying here. We actually consciously seek that, is this what you want from us? And, I would admit, I did step back from preaching for 6 months, many years ago, just to see, is this what you want me to do? And I got the sense that it was, so fine. I carried on. We don't, neither of us, take things for granted. It is, you keep asking the question, okay, what do you want of me? Is this something new? We seek. Sometimes we move on to new things. Sometimes, as with the local preacher training and mentoring, everyone else took a step back and we got to start standing forward. Okay, we'll take a hint, and thankfully Nikki came on board as well. So we do it as a team, because something I'm very conscious about, we are stronger together than we are apart, and that's the church and churches as well. A lot of stuff I've done has been ecumenical. I trained to a large part ecumenically, so I can speak semi-fluent Anglican, and it's something you suddenly realise that actually it is something about being in community, and I think that is, are we in the right community? And community, certainly small group, as with Susan, through the difficult times, it's been the small groups that's been very key, because they're the people that know you as well as anybody knows you. You've shared things with them, they've shared things with you, you've walked through the good, the bad and the indifferent, and actually they're the ones that can say, hang on a minute, just hang on a minute, or no, just come, you keep going, or whatever. They're the ones that can make or break situations in some respects. They've got the integrity, is the word you use, the knowledge and the love to help support you through whatever you're going through.
And during that time, I'm sure that people were kind of would be sharing with you and looking to support you. But were there, can you think of any people who actually said anything, that you felt, oh, that's a bit profound, that really contributed to giving you a bit more strength?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, the minister, because it was a not now, basically, we felt. And I want to admit, the support and the challenge I got from the minister at the time, the super at the time, he set up a study group for me. And one of the people involved went on for ministry themselves. And it was just a small group, but the support and the challenge of that, and it was very much study based, and that was very crucial. That they supported me in my ongoing learning, and actually, yeah, you've got something to offer. You're not just a case of off you go, but actually they saw something. They still saw something in me that I could contribute to the life of the church, and that was very, very important to me. Not just to, it'd be very easy just to throw your toys out the pram and storm off, but actually for somebody to continue to invest in you.
But nevertheless, that sense of call was there. So it leads me to kind of be thinking that we want to be encouraging people to sort of think, not only, yes, has Jesus come close, but what congregation is Jesus leading you to be connected to?
And I think the way things are certainly have been moving, and certainly over the last year moved on with the online and that sort of thing. Actually, the question I ask of myself, because of the studies I've done since and the courses I've attended, quite what is church? We know we think about like 10:30 on a Sunday morning, but actually, as you asked Susan, small group or 10:30, if you got a choice, and it's very much one or other, it's small group for me as well. But you can't get away from the big as well. It's not either or, it's both. But actually, I know of churches who run in different ways. You know, churches that run around food, that run around baking, that run around whatever it might be. About interests. And I think it's about people coming together around a common thing, whatever that might be, and with the center focus on Jesus. And I love my food. Anyone knows me, I like my food, and I like the variety. And that's the thing I find with church and worship. I like variety. I love going along to cafe style. I can even enjoy an hour of silence. I've been along to spoken services. I've even dabbled with the Book of Common Prayer. I full-blown worship band, as loud as you like, and let's go for it. I think for me, it's about being in community and about diversity, and there's something about shared experiences as well. I love the variety that we can get in.
We need to find a congregation, and then those congregations welcome other people and recognize, we're all a bit different. I mean, that's why we have, we accept this, part of churches together. We support each other, but we recognize that our differences are just innate in there, and hopefully we can still able to work together even though we've got those differences. Whereas I remember times when I was in church, and do you remember those debates? Do you remember those times, Stephen, where somebody used to pick something new out of, I don't know, Songs of Fellowship or something like that, and it would cause like, oh, that's a bit unusual. We got one hymn from Songs of Fellowship, and and there would be this one song, and it would kind of deunite a congregation really quickly. Or, I can remember organists that would only play hymns and wouldn't play worship songs and stuff. And we seem to be miles away from that now.
I remember going to one church, and they had a rather aversion to the new hymn book. So the naughty side of me, I chose all the hymns from that hymn book. But what I chose was traditional hymns. And they came in and they were chanting like mad until someone went, have you seen what he's picked? And they could have chucked them out the traditional hymn book without a problem. But I deliberately said, we'll use this hymn book. And it's just because it was different. And I think we're all different. I mean, you look at creation. There's no two humans the same. Well, very few if you go for identical twins. God created such a breadth. I love nature. We walk a lot, me and Susan, in nature. I was looking at a tree the other day, and it was full of the same variety of bird, and everyone was different. And if you can make the birds, some were bright yellow, some were pale yellow, some were different tones. I think God loves variety. And that's I'd love to embrace and enjoy the diversity we have. Some things suit me more than others, like everybody else. I'm happy with the geeky and the cricket, but the classical music not so much. But I think for church comes together as a diverse bunch of people, and we're all flawed. I remember Jeff Lucas once saying, if you've not been offended at church, you've not been there long enough.
Yeah.
And it was a case of we journey together. And some people rub you right, some people don't, some people you struggle. And that's the joy. And I think, I love people. People, I'm a sort of very focused on people. And I think there is something about, if someone says, do I need to go to church? You need to be in community with other Christians who are journeying. However you describe church, I think it's important that you do life together. Because I think if you don't, you're going to struggle.
Yes.
I would struggle if I didn't do it. And I'm assuming I am, some people might argue that I'm normal, but I would struggle not to do. I remember a lady in church. I was having a bit of I've had some health issues over the last few years, and I was having a bit of a struggle. A lady who I know, but not overly well. And this Sunday morning, she sort of went, "Come here." So I went over. I said, "What's up?" And she gave me this big hug. She said, "Last week, you looked like how I felt." And actually, she noticed I was struggling. And that meant so much that somebody had actually noticed and actually was willing to say, "It's okay. Have a hug." I know we can't now, but and that's about doing life together. You celebrate the good stuff, and actually someone's there to go, "Okay, I'll listen to the bad stuff as well."
And it's interesting. I think another one is when somebody says to you, "We missed you."
Yeah.
And they don't mean it with malice. They don't mean it with, like, "Where on earth were you?" Like, "Oh, we really missed you."
Yeah.
That just really impacts me. And also the other one is I've seen that people tell me, especially when they go to hospital. Of course, things have sort of changed somewhat now, but there's been an almost, people sometimes are almost embarrassed at the number of people who visit them from the church, or the number of the cards that come from their church family, as well as their own family visiting. And they're in a hospital ward, and across the bay there's somebody else who's had no one to visit at all.
Yeah.
And that one strikes me. And then the other one that I remind myself of, because you see, it's not just you who asked that question, Stephen. I mean, interestingly, that's the thing. We have security as presbyters, because we agree for a period, but we're also locked into this understanding that at some point you're going to move. And then when you do get to that, everything goes up in the air and it's all like uncertain. But every year I stand and I reassert my commitment. Those ordination promises that I made, I reassert them. Have to every year, which means if you're going to do that sensibly, then you have to ask it with actually thinking. And before, I think our understanding of ordination, and it probably prevails, is it's lifelong. It's a lifelong commitment. But we've seen people come and commit at much later age. And also, I think there is that question of, well, actually, do we assume that? Is it right? And even if it's not, okay, I'm going to retain my particular identity as a presbyter, where am I being called to serve? Because it might be outside the church for a period. So every year I ask that healthy question, and so you're not alone in that. And I think it's extremely helpful to ask, because the opposite is that we just meander through attending church because it's where we've always been. And then if we do that, we don't seem to be seated with understanding that God has a calling for us to fulfill, that we work out, and a specific role for us. For everyone in the life of church has a specific role. When you get that right, people fly. And that's amazing. I mean, it's a privilege, like being superintendent here at Peterborough, but I know I say it tongue in cheek. but actually I don't do very much. People come up to me and say, I've got a fantastic idea. I say, what is it? They share it. I say, that's a really good idea. Go and get on with it. If you need any help, just ask. Because we don't have the scope and scale to kind of, lead things headstrong like we used to before. I mean, sure, I have the areas that I'm interested in, but actually God has a ministry for everyone. And it's not just, we're talking about ministries that change people's lives.
And that can simply be, I mean, when I stepped away from preaching for 6 months, a lady, again, everyone knew, and an older lady, no longer with us, she phoned me up one night, haven't seen you for a while, how are you doing? And she had no idea quite what she did, but it was so meaningful, just that brief phone call. Just she actually thought enough of me to pick up the phone. Often you hear some of the more elderly people in the church say, well, I can't do what I used to. None of us can. We all change. But that lady, she sat at home, she thought of me, and she had enough thought to pick up the phone and make a phone call. And that meant so much to me at that time. I'm not saying it's a game changer, but it made a lot of difference. And I think a lot of people underestimate what they do. Simple things. I gave, apparently, I can't remember, I met a chap I used to work with, and I just bumped into him in the street and said, I remember when, and I gave him a gift, apparently, of a keyring. Can't remember why I would do it. I don't know completely well, but for him, it was a major thing. I'm thinking, did I really? But you don't know what you do until, it can make a difference. And I think that's the same within church. People have got so many callings and giftings, and they say, praying for others, picking the phone call up, dropping a cake round. You can't do that now, but when we can again, I think there is so many gifts and callings, and actually, I don't think we're always aware quite how important they are to the people receiving them.
I remember once, and it wasn't anything particularly contentious. It was something I felt awkward about that somebody said. It was actually in relation to my family in a meeting, and it was a kind of oh, if you'd been a woman, that would have been different. You would have got on with it or something. I don't carry any malice about it, and I felt a bit awkward at the time, but I thought I'm not going to go down that avenue because it'll take the focus of, I'm not going to just. I had a phone call the next day from somebody, and they absolutely blew me out of the water because they said, I'm really sorry. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but I just felt, I'm really sorry I didn't say anything. I should have spoken up this day. But it was the fact that they recognized, they phoned and said, yeah, I should have perhaps spoken up. Absolutely. Yeah. Just that somebody could, and these are just in small things, but that made a big difference. And I often say that in the words we share with others, Stephen, as you'll know, as preachers, we have the capacity to change somebody's life for a year.
Yeah.
You turn it on its head and think about what you can say that would be destructive, and then you get to see the power of positive stuff.
Yeah, that's the importance of being in church. However you define church, small or large, it's about being in that. It's the word. I was reading a book a little while ago, and it's about ancient practices. And the word they kept using was community, and that really struck me. It is about being in community, and there is, as you say, we're all different. You get together when you can get together at Christmas. You've got great Auntie Flo sitting in the corner, and the grandkids in the other corner. We're all a mishmash, but actually, it's something about journeying together and the strength that when things are difficult or good, you're there together. And I think that's the important thing for me about especially a Christian community.
Well, Stephen, it's been great to talk to you. It's been amazing. I always find these conversations really uplifting. Well, surprising is the first thing, and then always uplifting and inspiring, particularly as we've talked about what is it in the life of the church that encourages us. I think the thing that you've shared that we've not covered before is the sense in which God calls us to a particular congregation. And so to hear that you asked that question, God, are we in the right place? Are we doing the right thing? is really significant, because I think it'll help others. Because once we know we're in the right place, well, then we know that God's behind us, and then we get a little bit more confident because we're not on our own. I've certainly seen that happen. So I think that is significant, but also just your openness that despite the church's faults, that it gives us such strength to remain faithful, and also to find a place where we're cared for and listened to. There's a lot of being listened to that's going on there. So I'm so grateful. The thing is, this is your conversation, Stephen, and not mine, but I can't help myself, because I just want to close by saying, by sharing one final quote, and I don't know who it came from, but it's the phrase, if you ever find the perfect church, then get up and get out, because you just made it imperfect.
Exactly.
And I think it was, we relate back to, we're so different, and naturally there's going to be some creative tension, and creative tension's good stuff. There's going to be some funny conversations. There's going to be some, people at polar opposites. But if we think that we're the perfect deal, then we're really in trouble. But
one last thing. I remember a planning meeting for a service we used to run at Dogthorpe, and we turned up to plan this particular time of worship. There was only 5 or 6 of us there, and we all had different points of view, and we had a meeting that got nowhere. No one agreed with anything everyone said, but it was done in such love and in such a way that actually you could say, actually, I don't agree with you. I see it this way. Well, I actually see it that way. And actually, we all disagreed. And it was absolutely wonderful that we could actually disagree.
Yeah.
We had another meeting to plan the service again. But it was actually nice to be able to be in a place where you haven't all got to say the same thing. You could actually voice a different opinion. And that was wonderful.
And I think, and just as it's wonderful, really good to talk to you, and to bring it to a close, I think it's particularly interesting when I think about the God in love unites us conversations, because that is something where we're gonna differ, but the fact is that being able to find a place where we can be able to disagree, and we can respect each other, and we can understand what will never change in our, as we respect and each other's opinion. And as we hold in that, this isn't just, some kind of abstract principle. This is people's lives that we're holding here, that we can have our differences, but ultimately, and that's the thing that my experience of church as well has been, that, sure, there can be times when we have kind of disagreements, so we can't seem to reach a conclusion very quickly. But the minute somebody's unwell, everyone just round them straight away. I've seen it, sadly, I've seen it in churches. I've seen it in one church that was particularly ridden with a kind of modern worship, traditional worship thing, and all of this lot. And then it was, sadly, a worship leader was diagnosed with a very serious illness, and the whole attention of the church was suddenly went bang, straight onto the whirlwind. Look, Stephen, it's wonderful to be able to share with you, and thank you so much for sharing. Our thoughts and prayers with you in your ongoing ministry. Thank you for all you're doing, and God bless. And whatever the future holds, hopefully we'll be able to come back and just review how things are going in the future. But whatever the future holds, best wishes, and we'll be thinking and praying for you. So thank you so much, Steve.